This is my tropical style garden here in the UK. It is late September 2023 and I haven't really done a sort of tour or a look around the garden for a good few weeks now, so I thought I'd go around and just show the good and the bad for this year, the bits I've changed and what's worked, what's not worked, and what I may change for next year. So let's get into it. This first border, which is probably the border I look at the most when I look at from my house. Yeah, still not really happy with it. I like the sort of colours that I've used in. I like purples and reds, and I tend to use them throughout the garden. I was hoping for a lot more flowering colour, but I had quite a few Alstroemeras planted out and they've just been eaten to bits by slugs, so I've had to come out. So the purple flowering one here, Salvia Amistad, looks really good. Late summer, early August. Probably should have pruned it back a little bit earlier in the year to keep it a bit more compact and a bit lower. Would have probably fitted that spot better. Then we've got Mousse Bajou. Wasn't protected really for winter, so I was only left with one stem. That's coming back slowly. Then we've got Camarops cerifera. Talked in previous videos. This was transplanted from my front garden. It's recovering, still a few brown dead leaves on it. It's been in this spot a couple of seasons now, so hopefully should be much better next year. Canna Black Velvet, which is the red form of Cleopatra, looking really good. Down here, this is a new plant for me this year and really like it. Euphorbia Minors Merlot. So hopefully that's going to spread a bit more around there. As it gets colder, this foliage tends to get a lot darker red, so it's going to give me sort of a bit of contrast as I have to take the more tender plants out. So let's work our way around. This bit here is border. It's only 1 meter wide. It's under all these big shrubs and trees, so it's just really dry. The soil's really poor, so it hasn't worked. I think next year I'm going to take out, see if you look here, there's a can in the daily planted there. I did try to dig in loads of manure, but I'm fighting the elements. It just doesn't like it there. So what I think I might do for next year is, if I go down here, there's Fascicularia Barcola, and I kind of like the idea. This is sort of generally an epiphyte that you can plant out. It's a hardy bromeliad, and it will get a lot bigger than that, probably sort of maybe 2 foot by 2 foot spread. Now I'm thinking of planting this whole area all the way from the Camarops to that cord line, just with them. So if I can get hold of the plants, or at least a good metre, 2 metre square of just them, so it's a nice bit of clump planting, and they look after themselves. They don't really need to do anything. They do get like a nice red tinge to them, and then they can flower. So I think that's a way of dealing with that, as said by quite a few other tropical YouTubers. Right plant, right place. And I think they'll deal with that situation really well. So what have we got here? Cycas Revoluta put out a new flush this year and has done, yeah, it just looks really good. Probably the most full it's ever looked. So I don't normally protect it unless it gets really cold, because it does have quite a lot of protection. from the overhead canopy, and it shelters it quite a bit. But because it's looking so good, I think if it does sort of start getting minus sort of 4, -5s or continuous cold, then I'm going to put something over it, maybe just a load of fleece and an old builder's bag, something while it's really cold. But if these get damaged by the frost, they can look bad for a year, 2 years. It all depends on how long before the next flush. So I'm definitely going to make the effort this year, if it gets really cold, to protect it. If it is a mild winter, then it will be left as it is. Next to it, that is Mahoney and Soft Caress. Then we've got Torbay Dazzler. That does get some sort of protection put over the top of it if it's sort of -6s, -7s, -8s continuous cold. Then we've got the Trachycarpus Princeps, which has been in years and took forever to grow, but slowly starting to push leaves out. More kind of red velvet, Echinacea Sunseeker Red. Now the Echinacea Sunseeker Red needs more water in this spot than I probably thought, and if I miss the water in for a day or so, it starts to soon wilt and look unhappy. So that's a lesson learned on that. So this is my border going around to the back, which I've done a video on some replanting I did recently. Some of it is done really well. I like the grasses and the way they overhang the border, softens this part going into the back. And the back of my border, I only use greens, so I sort of wanted to have colour but without it being too much. Now, a couple of complete failures. The Colocasia is really struggling ever since I planted it there. I know it's too dry and I've still done it. And then in the video that I did of this, I planted black coral there. Well, that went downhill straight away as well, even though I probably put in 2 bags of all sort of manure, mixed it all in. So they won't be going in again next year. Something else is probably going to go there. Really, maybe some gingers. I think get a nice ginger there and try that. So this side, what have we got? We've got a potted Schefflera Taiwaniana just there. Then we've got these Carex Everillo grasses, which are a lime green grass, really brighten the spot up because it's sort of a bit of a dark and dreary pathway, so I wanted that the colour from the foliage. And then we've got here Persicaria Virginiana Variegata. Really like that, and it's like that spot. So tender begonias underneath, they'll have to be dug up soon. Then I have planted out these small cuttings of Begonia luxurians. They'll be dug up soon and brought into a frost-free greenhouse. Then round here, going into my back part, we have Brasseopsis mitis, which I brought this year. I've planted it out, still not dead sure if I'm going to leave it in the ground or if I'm going to bottle it and dig it up and put it back into my greenhouse. They are meant to be hardy, but it can take it back down to the ground if badly damaged by frost. So we'll see in a few weeks time what decision I make. So let's go around and have a look in the back part. So I'm now under my gazebo, and this is the part where I only use greens. Quite a few potted plants. Been playing around with just trying things like some of these bromeliads to, you know, take away some of these bare patches. This is trunks of my tetrapanax. Water feature went in for this year. Really adds the calming effect down here, but it sort of needs something going up against the cabin behind it. I don't like all this bare patches from there to the window. So either the monsteras, which come in for winter, raised up a bit to sort of fill that gap, or something shade loving that's going to deal with it. Let's see what else we got. Right, so new plant that I've just bought, not sure where I'm going to put it yet. This is one of the mega fatsia polycarpus. Doesn't actually look very pretty at the minute, but bought that. Find a spot for it for next year. Let's go around. So in these pots we've got a few different ferns, grasses, farfugium, and this is a new begonia. Really like this. Hardy begonia as well, apparently. So that's begonia Coralitzi. I'll put it on the screen if I've got it wrong. And something else that I've just brought, which cost me about £150. Brassioxis bodinieri. Don't really know the hardiness of this yet, so it's in a pot and it's going to go into my greenhouse for the winter. Let's come out. This is new for me this year. Amorphophallus cognac. This is in a pot, as you can see, and it will be, like a bulb in the pot, and it will be brought in for winter into the greenhouse and just left to dry right out, get dead dry over winter in that pot, obviously with all the foliage and that cut off, and just stored like that and wait for it to come back. But really like it. Got a really nice architectural shape to it. And it's sort of in semi-dappled shade here. It's got protection from all this overhead cover. So, right, let's work our way around. This offshoot from my tetrapanax is just grown right over the path. So I'm gonna have to cut a load of this foliage off. Let's go down, let's get... Okay, so earlier in the year I did a video on planting this shady border. Now above it is Trachycarpus, there is a Russ, a Photinia, red robin, and this Schefflera rhododendrofolia. And that gives quite a nice bit of dappled shade under here. So there's lots of hardy evergreens. Fatsia polycarpa, Edward Needham form. Looking really good actually. Nice dark green, very shady spot. Quite dry. Doing really well. And then lower down, see, when I planted this bamboo, which is Fargesia rufa, fountain sort of bamboo, I went, why am I putting it there? I had it in a pot and I thought I'll just put it there, and it looks rubbish. It just flops over all the other plants, so that's going back in a pot and being got rid of. Round here, complete and utter failure. Okay, so this bit here was what I intended to be like an acidic bed. So I filled it full of ericaceous compost and planted this rhododendron soilinense, if I've said that right. Now, this one, which is looking really good, is in a pot of ericaceous soil. The one in front went into the ground, which I believed, and I should do a soil test really, with loads of ericaceous compost to make it more acidic. Just went downhill from the moment it went in, and they're in exactly the same light conditions as they're next to each other. One's in the ground, one's in the pot. It does get quite dry here. I only ever water this section with rainwater because we have quite hard water here to keep them happy. There's also these Blechnum chilense, which I thought might do really well in here. They've not done well at all. The only thing that has is this Pires Katsura. So that's all got to be redone next year and rethought out. So that may have, I don't know, a couple of maybe fat seers or something, but I have a lot in here. But so let's go around. What else have we got? That's an Alpina Zerabut. It's just in a pot. That goes into a frost-free greenhouse. Lovely variegation. Then we've got this Edgeworthia. This was planted out this year. Actually fell over pretty much the first month I planted it, so it took a little while to establish. I did have to have a bamboo cane to hold it up. Just trying to reach forward towards the light, even though I sort of thought it would do well in the dappled shade conditions. Let's move back. So at the bottom we've got just some hardy evergreen ferns. That's hardy begonia, and then a tender begonia, and then we've got the black mundo grass, Ophiopogon, just to add that sort of colour at the bottom. This is a variegated Nandina that was moved from a sunnier spot and actually looks a lot sort of more healthier here, doing much better. Right, let's have a look here. Heuchera looks a bit tatty. It's been in for a few years, but doesn't look great at the moment. Then we've got my transplanted Camarops. Finally, after all them years, starting to push out new growth. Hopefully the winter isn't too bad. Let's back up a bit. So this is just as well. Complete, looks terrible. It absolutely, probably April, May time, when I first planted it out, looked really nice. We had the Alströmera Indian Summer, which has just continuously been et. Then we've got the Burgundy Eucomus, which, despite me planting even deeper to try and hold it more upright, just keeps falling over every year. So I've had it, it's not going in again. Whereas sort of the other Eucomus, much better behaved. They don't seem to grow as tall and want to tip over. We've got a Musa Bajou here that the stems just obviously wasn't strong enough from after the winter and has just snapped in the last windstorm we had, where usually you'd expect the leaves just to get shredded, but got to cut that back down to the ground now. Let's work our way around here. I ain't going to go too much into detail because I don't really like that section. This is another sort of shady border under my two tree ferns. I put this water feature in this year. and I really like it. I sort of can sit here next to the water feature, get a different perspective of the garden from under here. And it's planted around with another Carex Everillo, which really likes it there and brightens that spot up. Next to, that's a Brunera Jack Frost, if I remember rightly. And then behind it is just all different hardy ferns. Moving around, Fatsia Spider's Webbed, and just basically hardy evergreen foliage plants. It's really easy to look after, I don't have to deal with it too much. This is my Fatsia Polycarpa Edward Needham form, which has been in many years now, and above it a Schefflera Rhododendrofolia. Now this was quite a bit of winter damage. I had -5 Celsius was the lowest, but because that's up there and it's more exposed, but what that's done is caused it to gain lots and lots of offshoots, sort of stem sort of divided, so that should really in the next year or two look so much better. And it is just starting to flower as well, so it all depends on whether the cold comes and kills them before the berries, whether I get seed. I've tried to pour off this and I didn't get any seed at all. Sorry, I did get seed, but none of them germinated. I'm just not sure whether if they were ready or if it was fresh enough. I don't know, it was a fail. Anyway, so right, my plan at the beginning of this year, when I started making these videos, was to get the garden looking absolutely stunning, ready for this big epic video in September, which is pretty much prime time for UK tropical gardens. But in reality, gardening ain't that easy, is it? We get windstorms that come and batter the leaves. We get all kinds of weather that we just can't sort of predict. And that tends to be why with my gardens I use lots and lots of hardy evergreens, because despite the weather, lots of these still look decent, but you do need them sort of big leafed bananas, tetrapanics, whether it be gunneras, depending on whatever your style is, to give that sort of more big jungly look. But it is hard to keep them looking good all year round, because the winds come, and unless you're in a nice sheltered spot, they will get shredded, they will sort of get battered around, and that can affect the sort of overall look of your garden. But that is what it is. That is part of gardening in the UK, or anywhere in the world, I suppose. We all want to make these beautiful stunning gardens, but in reality that's quite hard to achieve week in, week out. So without going on any longer, thank you very much for watching, and any questions please leave it in the comments, and I'll see you next time.